Hello, I'm Helen Bradley. Welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can draw a ribbon banner in Illustrator. Before we get started with this video, let's have a look and see what it is that we're trying to achieve. I'm going to show you how you can create a ribbon like this one here over an award seal in Illustrator. So we're going to create all these elements that are shown here. So let's get started. I'm going to start a brand new document. I have a new document here which is 1,000 points by 1,000 points, but it could be any size of your choice. I'm going to select the fill color that I'm going to use for my banner, and I don't want any stroke at all. So I'm going to start with this as my banner image. I'm going to select the rectangle tool and I'm going to draw out just half of my banner, or maybe a little bit more than half of it, but so that this is going to be the ribbon across the middle of the banner. I'm going to duplicate this because I want a piece that is exactly the same width. So I'm holding the Alt or Option key. Let's just choose the selection tool first, Alt or Option, and just dragging a duplicate away. Now I want this to be considerably smaller, so I'm just going to test it in place. And that looks about probably what I want. Now I need some extra points on this path because when I click the direct selection tool, you'll see that there's only 4 points, these corner points. So I'm going to choose Object, Path, Add Anchor Points, because that adds some extra anchor points, which allows me to access the point that is halfway down this side. When I click on it and then drag, I can drag it inwards so that I create this sort of edge to my ribbon. Now I'm going to select it with the selection tool, just press the letter V and move it into position. I just want to test to make sure it's going to be exactly what I want it to be. I think it's a little bit long, so I want to shorten it up, but I don't want to lose this shape, so I'm going to select the direct selection tool, select over all of these anchor points here and just move them inwards. So I'm just going to drag on this path and just move it horizontally inwards, and I can do that by holding the Shift key as I do, and that constrains it to moving horizontally. Back to the selection tool, press the letter V, and now I can just move it into place. That's looking pretty good to me. But let's look at the layers palette. Right now the tail of the ribbon is in front of the rest of the ribbon. So this is the rest of the ribbon, this is the tail, and the tail is in front. We really want it behind. So I'm going to pick up the path and just drag it below the rest of the ribbon. Now we're going to add the shading, and we do that using the pen tool, but it's really easy to do even if you're not very handy with the pen tool. Let's just zoom in here so that we can see where we're working. Switch back to the pen tool, and I'm going to locate the points where I want the shading to be. I'm going to start here with this anchor point because this is where my shading's starting, and I'm just holding my mouse pointer over here to pick up this point. So I've clicked here once. Now I'm going to click on this anchor point here, and then up here at the intersection here of these two shapes, and then again back over the starting point. So I'm just clicking to create this triangular shape. You can see the triangular shape here. We're just going to change its color to make it a bit darker. So I'll double click on its color. I'm just going to drag downwards to make it a darker color. And I can take this tail as well and make it just a little bit darker than it is, but not as dark as the shading. Double click on the color, and let's just make it just a tiny bit darker so that we're getting a bit of dimension here, a bit of visual dimension. I'll press Ctrl and 0 to go back out so I can see the shape I'm working with. I'm going to select over all of the pieces because now I need to make the other half of the ribbon. I'm going to do that by reflecting this one. Object, Transform, Reflect. We're going to reflect across the vertical. You can already see it's in place because we've got the preview turned on, but I don't want to just reflect it, I want to make a copy at the same time. So I'll click Copy. Now I've got two pieces of ribbon. I'm just going to drag the one I've created away from the first. I'm holding the Shift key so that it goes in exactly a horizontal direction, so these are nicely lined up. Let's select all these pieces again. I'm just going to take them back, and I'm just going to hold the Shift key as I drag them. I'm just going to eyeball where I want this to be. So let's test that. I think it's a really good size for my ribbon. So I'm going to select over just these two middle pieces and use the Pathfinder, which you can get to by choosing Window and then Pathfinder. And I'm just going to click Unite, which is this one up here. And that just unites these two pieces into a single piece. Now we're pretty much finished with our ribbon if we just wanted a straight ribbon, but if we want it to bend, then we're going to need to do some work with it. Let's select over it so that we've got the entire element, and I'm going to choose Object Group. I have to group it because if I don't group it, this next step is going to break it into little pieces and bend every piece of it a different way. Now I'll choose Effect and then Warp, and I'm just going to choose Arc. And I already have these settings in place, but you can see that you can choose horizontal or vertical, and we want a horizontal arc, and a negative value gives us a down swinging arc, and a positive value, we just take it up. Well, just for something different, let's actually make ours an upward one. So I'll just select that value and click OK. Now if we want to look at the ends of our ribbon, we can at this point. Let's just select over these ends here. Let's zoom in so that we can see what we're working on. I want to change the color of this layer. Right now it's pink. It's making it really difficult for you to see. So let's just go and pick a very dark color for it so that you can see more clearly these lines that we're working with. Now this anchor point here is controlling this point on the ribbon, and this one here is controlling this point. So I'm going to click the direct selection tool. Now I can work on this point here. If I click on it to isolate it, I'm just going to drag it in a little bit along its current path just to shorten it. And this one here I can do the same thing with, just drag it in along its current path to shorten it a little bit. Let's zoom out again, and we'll do the other end. We need to click the selection tool so that we select over this entire shape, work out where our anchor points are, which is here and here. Click on this one because this is controlling this point here, and now we can move it slightly. And then again with this one. I'm being careful to bring it in along its current path so that I don't reshape it in a way that I don't want to. Let's go back out. Well, I'll press Ctrl-0 to do that. And now we have our ribbon shape. We're ready to create the circular award that goes in here, and also then break apart our ribbon shape so that we can put the circular award in the correct location so that it's going to be layered properly. I'll start by drawing the circle for the award, so let's just go and get the blue color I'm going to use for the larger circle. I'll choose the ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw out a circle. I'll do that by holding the Shift key as I draw it, and I've got it in a really good position here, but say I hadn't got it in the correct position, I could, as I continue to draw it, hold the space bar and move it into position so I can make sure that I've got it exactly where I want it to be. And when I've got it drawn and positioned, I'm going to let go the left mouse button and then let go the other two keys, the Shift and the space bar. Our ribbon at the moment is underneath our circular shape, so let's just have a look and see what we've got of our ribbon. I'm going to turn my circle off for the moment. These are the two shading pieces here. Here are the two tails of the ribbon, and here's the ribbon itself. Ultimately, I want this part of the ribbon to be above this circular shape and all the other pieces to be underneath it, because that's how they would fall if we actually had a physical ribbon over a circle. So I'm going to add a layer here. In fact, I'm going to add two layers, and I'm going to break this shape up so that I have the top part of the ribbon on the top, the bottom part of the ribbon on a separate layer, and my circle on a layer all by itself. Well, I'm going to start by moving the circle onto its new layer. Here it is here. I've got it hidden for now because we need to start working on this ribbon. Now for this ribbon to be able to be broken up into multiple layers, I'm going to have to ungroup it. The problem is if I ungroup it from here with just Object Ungroup, we lose all our arc shape. So let's just undo that. What I need to do is to expand its appearance first of all, which is why I took the time to draw out my circle, because I want to be fairly sure that I've got everything right before I commit to the ribbon looking exactly the way it does. So I'm going to select the ribbon and I'm going to choose Object Expand Appearance. Now that I've expanded its appearance, I can ungroup it. Object Ungroup, and it's not losing its shape. Now I'm going to take the pieces that I want onto their separate layers. Well, the piece that I want on a separate layer is this middle part of the ribbon, so I've selected it here and I'm going to drag it up so it's on layer 3. The circle is on layer 2 and we can now make that visible, and the rest of the ribbon is on the lower layer. This is the shading here. This is this side of the ribbon here. Then we have the shading on this side above the ribbon tail on that side. So it's dimensional and the dimensions are all correct. We're seeing all the pieces that we should be seeing. I think though that my circle could be just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to choose the selection tool, hold Shift and Alt as I just make it a little bit smaller than it is so that we can see the actual shading on the ribbon. Now I'm ready to create this award, and the award is created using the Appearance panel because there's a lot of things happening in it and we want to do it just with a single shape. So I'm going to choose Window and Appearance to display the Appearance panel. I'm just going to bring back in the original so that you can see what we're aiming for. We need to create this circle here, and this one here. I've got the outermost circle, so I'm going to create this fill 2 more times. I'm going to click on it and drag and drop it onto this new icon. So that gives me 3 layers of fill. This top one I'm going to make a sort of greeny blue, but I need it to be much smaller than the underneath one so I can see things. With it selected, I'm going to choose Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform, and I want this to be considerably smaller. Let's try 75% of the original size. I think that's a pretty good setting, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'll just click OK. So there's my middle shape. Now the next to middle shape is this one here. I'm going to add a color to it as well, and I'm going to make it, actually I think I might make it a white. I'm going to make it have a ruffled edge. So with it selected, I'm going to choose Effect and then Distort and Transform, and this one's going to have a zigzag edge. I'll turn Preview on. I want it to be smooth and I want quite a few ridges per segment, and I'm just going to select the size of those ridges. Now this shape is a little bit big right now, so it's a little hard to see. It might actually be easier if we sized it down before we started. So let's just go and get this and let's size it down with Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform. So with the preview turned on, let's take that to say 85% of the original size, and I'll click OK. And with it still selected, let's go and add that zigzag effect with Effect, Distort and Transform, Zigzag. Now it's a little bit easier for us to see exactly what's happening. I'm ignoring the fact that the blue shape is doing the transform as well because I don't want it to, but I'm just going to ignore that for now. I want it to be a reasonable size, and I certainly want quite a few of these ripples. So when I'm happy with the rippling that I'm getting, I'm just going to click OK. And what happened here was that the entire path got rippled and I didn't want it to be. So I'm going to take the zigzag here and I'm going to drag the zigzag into the fill that I actually want the zigzag to be applied to, which is just this white fill here. And that stops it affecting the entire path. Now we're going to add a stroke, and I'm going to add this sort of purple colored stroke, and I'm going to set it to a point size, well, for this probably about 7 points. but I want it to be inside this blue area. So with the stroke selected, I'm going to choose Effect and then Path and then Offset Path. Again, I'm going to show the preview. I'm going to start decreasing this value to bring this stroke inside the outer edge of my shape. When I've got it in the correct position, I'll click OK. I think it's a bit too big a stroke, so I'm going to take it back down to 5 points. Now I want a stroke around this filled shape here. So I'm going to click on this filled shape and I'm going to add a new stroke. Now it's being applied to the outside of the shape here, and you can see that it's not got its little edges on it. But if I take the zigzag from this fill here and put it up on this stroke, we'll start to get those appearances being duplicated onto this stroke. So first of all, I'm going to take the transform, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to drag and drop it into this stroke here. Then I'm going to take the zigzag, duplicate that, and drag and drop it into this stroke here. And now you can see that this zigzag stroke is now applied to this white shape. It's just that it's on the edge of the white shape and I want it inside it a little bit. Well, I'm just going to click on this stroke that we want to affect and choose Effect, Path, Offset Path. And we're going to bring this one in just a little bit from the outside of the shape. Now it's got a zigzag on it. I'm just ignoring what's happening there for now. I'm just looking at the offset for this. So I'm going to click OK. And we've ended up with an extra zigzag, and that's because the offset path is above the zigzag. If I reverse their order, we're going to get exactly what we want. Sometimes fiddling with the appearance panel, just moving an effect into a different position will have a totally different look to your image. Now I'm concerned with this fill here, which is this inside one, and I want to put a couple of borders around it. So I'm going to click the stroke and I'm going to take the transform for this fill and apply it to this stroke so that this stroke is transformed exactly the same way as the element to which it's going to be attached, which is this one here. Now it's fine in position where it is here, it's just a little bit wide, so I'm going to take it down to say 2 points in size. Now I want a second one of these, so I'm going to take this entire stroke and duplicate it again. And now I've got a second one on top of the first. What I want to do is bring it in just a little bit. So with the stroke selected, I'm going to choose Effect and then Path and then offset the path. And now I'm going to bring it in just as much as I want it to be and click OK. So now we've created this really sophisticated appearance for what is just a single shape. If we go back to the layers palette, we've just got a single shape layer here. This is the path and it's got all these appearances applied to it to give it all this dimension. You can add your text then to these elements. I'm going to show you how to add a background to this design though. I've got a script that I use to add a rectangle the size of the artboard. Before I do that, I'm just going to shrink down my artboard because I think it's too big for this element. So I've just selected the artboard tool and I'm just shrinking down my artboard. And having done that, I'm now going to run my script, but you could just create a rectangle the size of your artboard just by hand. I use a script because it's just a whole lot easier. If you want to see how to script in Illustrator, look out for one of my other videos on scripting in Illustrator. So now I have my layers panel. Here's my rectangle that is the shape of the artboard. It comes in at the top, so what I'm going to do is add a brand new layer to my image and I'm just going to move it to the bottom into that layer because I want it to appear underneath everything else because it's going to be the background for my element. Now with it selected, I've actually gone and opened up some of the patterns that come with Illustrator. You can do that by clicking the little flyout menu here on the swatches panel, open swatch library, go to patterns, and I've chosen the decorative ones. I think I opened up the Vonster patterns, but then again they could be decorative legacy. But what I've done is effectively gone and opened up all a range of patterns that I can use. So with this shape selected, I'm adding this pattern behind it. Now the pattern is really intense, way too intense for this object, but let's go to the appearance panel and see what changes we can make. Right now I've got a fill with the pattern in it, so I'm going to add a new fill to this shape, and I'm just going to bring it down so that's right on top of the other fill, and I'm going to fill this time with a solid color. I'm going to use one of the colors from my illustration, this one here. So now what we've got is a fill on top of a pattern. I want to see the pattern through the fill, so I'm going to take the opacity setting here for this solid color layer, and I'm going to set it to something like screen, or one of these lightning ones. Color dodge would do it as well, so too would lighten. And if I change the opacity, I can change how these two fill layers are interacting with each other. I think for this one, I'm just going to use the lighten value, and I'm going to use a little bit of my fill color over the top of my pattern just to kill the pattern a little bit, so that I'm getting the effect of it, but it's not really very intense. So there's the background to our shape, and now we would just go ahead with the text tool to add the text elements to our award. I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you for joining me for this Illustrator video tutorial. Look out for more tutorials on my YouTube channel, and consider subscribing to my channel, and you'll be alerted when new videos are released. And visit my website at projectwoman.com, where you'll find more tips, tricks and tutorials on a range of applications including Photoshop, Illustrator, Lightroom and a whole lot more.